What happens when an artist doesn't just represent the natural world, but makes it anew through a creative lens? 5 alumni artists work with animals, plants, and environments, crafting them into personal expression and commenting on the human impulse to alter the world around us. The exhibition, curated by Lesley Wright, director of the museum, includes paintings, printmaking, sculpture, and drawings by artist Fay Stanford, Pamela Crockett, Aaron Rothman, Regan Golden, and John Martin Bell.
Hi, my name is Regan Golden McNerney. I am an artist, writer, teacher, and parent of 2 children. I am a conceptual artist. I work in whatever medium best expresses my ideas about growth and entropy. For the last 15 years, I've been working primarily in collage and drawing, as I feel like these tools really reflect on this natural cycle of growth and decay. And I'm thinking about this not only as I'm kind of walking through a forest, but also thinking about how cycles of growth and decay are experienced in our own bodies. Through my work, I try to represent an embodied experience of a landscape. Embodiment is the integration of all the senses, thoughts, and feelings as you move through a space. My interest in kind of working from landscape started when I was actually a student at Grinnell. I took a class that combined printmaking and prairie studies. In this class, I started making a series of small drawings in graphite that described my experience of the sound of the prairie in springtime in Iowa, which many of you know is very loud. There's birds, bugs, even the sound of the trucks passing by the highway near the prairie where we were working. And I started thinking through this project about ways of experiencing a landscape that did not privilege the sense of sight. For the past decade, my artwork and research has focused on edgelands, from a forest in Massachusetts behind my grandmother's house that bordered a subdivision to a kind of ragged prairie here in St. Paul that runs along a rail yard. Edgelands act like kind of scrims, rendering other spaces invisible, and yet these urban forests are often overlooked and unmapped. I think it's really important that these 2 forests border places where I have lived, and having that access to urban nature in my backyard is a really important part of my practice. I think that my job as a contemporary artist in a warming world due to climate change is to depict changing landscapes and also to convey an embodied experience of being in the world at this time. I think for this reason, I focus on my own backyard and the urban forest that's near my home in the middle of the city. It's really here close to home that I can experience how the landscape changes daily through the seasons, and that also through human interventions into the landscape. So I have 3 series of works, photographs and drawings that I rotate working on throughout the year. The winter series is called Thaw, and through this work I explore the kind of meaning of winter and how winter is lived in Minnesota, even in a changing climate. The summer series is Prairie Constructs. There's more than 140 images currently in this series. This series focuses on urban prairie plants. Some of them are native plants. A lot of them are invasive plants that have kind of filled in this urban forest. The third series is called Ephemerals. There's about 40 images in this series currently, and the Ephemeral series I work on in the fall and in the spring. So I photograph and draw the plants in these overgrown kind of patches of weeds that are near my house as the seasons change. And my images are as much about making visible this overlooked landscape, I think, as they are about documenting the passage of time. So I make drawings, collages, photographs, and also large-scale cut paper installations. I would say that I have a feminist, critical approach to landscape. Through my work, I want to challenge the conventions of landscape. Traditional American landscape paintings depict a place frozen in time and preserved eternally from a fixed point of view. And my works consist mostly of fragments of images cut apart that are assembled only briefly and then recycled into new works, whether I'm working on a series of photographs or drawings or even my large-scale cut paper installations. The images in Nature Made are actually made using both a scanner and a copy stand. And I think of these works as kind of digital versions of photograms or botanical solar prints. And those are both kind of early forms of photography that I'm very interested in. Man rays, rayographs, as well as Anna Atkins' beautiful botanical cyanotypes of ferns. The images in Nature Made are shown as large-scale digital color prints. I also put together my prints into artist books, and then I also print them at a large scale and then sometimes cut them up to make my installations. No matter what kind of format I'm working in, I'm always focused on showing the evolution in the landscape over the course of the year. I start my process by collecting both plants and plastics that I find in the urban forest by my house. And then I place those materials within the frame of the scanner or the copy stand and then document them as they react and evolve. They might melt, flow, crumple, or wilt. And I often make multiple photographs from a single combination of paint and photographs, cut up, and plants and plastic remnants. I feel like through my work I orchestrate this kind of organic process of melting and wilting that is then recorded and amplified through the use of digital technology. The resulting images not only capture, but also magnify the kind of really spectacular, unfettered growth of this urban forest. My process is informed by the fragmentation of the site itself. I splice and reorder the kind of traditional horizontal landscape format or the vertical botanical illustration and kind of mash them together to reflect the way that the land itself is segmented. I think through my work, whether I'm making large-scale photographs or large-scale installations, my work questions the idea of nature as harmonious and tries to think about these urban landscapes as alternately kind of exceeding their confines, kind of overflowing the curb, and then because they're so constrained, kind of devouring themselves. And this mirrors my cyclical process. I create images, large scale, print them, and then kind of devour them, cutting them all apart to create new pieces, new collages, new installations, or rephotographing them for small scale photographs or cutting them up into little drawings. So many materials go through this process of expansion and contraction in my work repeatedly. So using both traditional and digital collage techniques, I combine image fragments with painted marks and graphite drawings and fragments of plants to kind of manifest the energy and entropy of the urban forest. My process is improvisational, and I embrace uncertainty through my process as I describe the kind of landscape that I'm looking at from multiple perspectives. No one image that I make ever kind of captures or encapsulates the landscape. I always work in a series. And in a single image, you will often see both like a distanced view of the landscape and then a zoomed in view on the plants. By combining these different perspectives through this process of kind of cutting and assembling and drawing, I reflect on my experience of the landscape and also my relationship to this place. So I was a history major and an art major at Grinnell, so a cross-disciplinary approach to making art really defines my practice. Right now I'm learning about the history of Minnesota, the homeland of the Dakota, in the book Minnesota Mokoche by Gwen Westerman and Bruce White. I think it's really important to understand the history of colonization and land use in the place where I live and work. I am also learning more about plants from ecologists and plant biologists. I really enjoy working alongside of scientists in my work. So in 2010, I did an artist residency at the Harvard Experimental Forest in Massachusetts. And in 2017, I did a residency at the College of Biological Sciences Conservatory at the University of Minnesota, which actually houses rare plants from around the world. This research has not only informed my artwork, but also my writing. I recently edited and published a series of articles called Seeing Plants, Vision and Botany in Contemporary Art. This was published through Minnesota Artists and the Walker Art Center in collaboration with a number of other artists in the Twin Cities. So lastly, I'll just say that light is really an important ingredient in the transformation of my materials and the elevation of the urban forest that I work from. I work with light when photographing the landscape, or making drawings of the landscape or scans of fragments of the landscape. In traditional landscape painting, light is really interpreted as lumen, like an observed light, or lux, which is the divine light or the light of reason. But I prefer to think about light in terms of the philosopher Heidegger's definition. He describes it as Lichtung, which translates as light in a forest clearing, meaning that kind of openness to the landscape must precede lumen or lux, observation or judgment. So my work enables me to be open to the natural world that's around me, even in the city. And it's through this sense of wonder and the persistence of urban nature that I get the inspiration for my work. And I hope to pass on that sense of wonder to the viewers through my images and installations.